Today we're looking at Cars 3, and we're really talking about this topic of life moves fast. How do we keep up without spinning out? And just kind of taking a look back at that preview, what we see is in this movie, the whole idea is that this race car named Lightning McQueen feels like he's getting old and everything is going faster than him. Everything's better than him, and he's trying to keep up without spinning out. And let me tell you, I may not look that old, or to some of you I may look old. I'm not sure really how you feel about that. But I do feel like I'm getting older. Like the average person I hang out with these days is like 21 years old because I work here at ODU. So that makes me feel a little old. I'm getting to that point where pretty soon I'm going to start having more hair on my ears than I am on my head. And that makes me feel pretty old. But here's the worst one, right? I'm getting to the point in my life where my wife's celebrity crush is this guy. Nope, there he is. I do not know what that says about me. I really don't. But maybe you got something else different going on in your life. Maybe for you the struggle isn't that your life is feeling like you're old. Maybe you feel like you're about to graduate or you're going through school and you don't know what's coming next, and that's really, really stressful. Or maybe you're somebody who feels like in work you just can't get up the ladder. Everybody else seems to be progressing faster than you, and you're trying to figure out how to keep up without spinning out. Maybe for you it has something to do with money. You just don't have as much money as you want, and you're trying to keep up with all the demands without spinning out of control. Maybe for you it's something about how you feel like you look. You're trying to be healthy, you're trying to look good, but it feels like you just can't keep up with everybody else. Or maybe it's something else going on in your life, a relationship. But what we want to talk about today, what I want to do is I want to give you some solutions for how you can solve this problem of trying to keep up without spinning out. But before we do any of that, I really want us to start us on a strong note where we realize that above everything today, there is a God who can overcome all these problems that we're facing, who can overcome our stress, and who can help us keep up without spinning out. And so I want us to just begin by singing about that. And so if you want to stand up right now, Tim is going to lead us in a song called Overcome. Right. So today we are talking about how do you keep up without spinning out, and we're talking about Cars 3. Now just to help you guys a little bit before we get started, I want to just show you this right here. These are some notes that we have. If you're the kind of person who's like me and you like to follow along and sometimes you can't remember what it was that somebody said and you just like to take notes and that helps you to focus, this is a great tool for you. We hole punched it, so if you want a little binder and you want to keep these each time and kind of look back at them, you can do that. But yeah, just that very first problem that we're looking at today, right there. Life moves fast. How do you keep up without spinning out? How do you keep up without spinning out? And, you know, we all deal with stress in our lives, and we all face it in different ways. It's pressure to keep up with the people around us. It's pressure from the things that we're doing. We want to achieve. We want to be better. We want to be more. You know, we want to be a better boyfriend or a better husband. We want to be a better friend. We want to be a better student. We want to be more successful or have more money or have a better car or whatever it is. And sometimes it feels like it's just so hard to keep up without just feeling like it all spins out of control and we just can't handle the pressure. And so what I want to give you today is I want to give you two very practical things that will help you to keep up without spinning out. But I will tell you that what I'm going to give you, I'm not going to be able to address every single problem. But what I can give you are some big picture sorts of things that will reorient the way that you think and reorient the way that you see the world so that you can better handle whatever pressure comes your way, whether you're facing it today or whether you're facing it sometime down the road. And so I'm just going to jump right into them and take you into the first thing that we learn. And that's this. Life moves fast. How do you keep up with spinning out? Solution number one is you've got to love what you have. Love what you have. One of the biggest pressures that we face in this world is this pressure to have what everyone else has, whether that is their success or whether that is the person that they're dating or whether that's the money that they have or the car that they have or the clothes that they have or whether we just want to be like them. There's all this pressure to have more and do more and be more. And the problem is that sometimes that pressure gets so big that we will honestly fake it because we don't want other people to know that we're not there, that we're not who we want them to think we are. We're so ashamed of who we are that we pretend to be something that we're not. And let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. So when you look at this picture right here, what do you think you see? Right, does anybody else see some snake heads right here? Right, but guess what it actually is? It's a moth. Right, so here's the kind of the thorax of the moth, and these are just the wings that look like snakes, because this moth over time has adapted so that it looks like a snake, so nothing will attack it because other things are intimidated by it. So it protects itself by looking like something that it's not. Here's another one. What does that look like to you? Yeah, pretty obvious, right? But guess what it is? It's a caterpillar. Yes, and not photoshopped. I've searched it. It's a caterpillar. And same thing, right? It doesn't want to be attacked by other things, so it pretends to be something that it's not so that it can protect itself, so that other things won't attack it, so that other things will think it's something that it isn't. The truth is that for so many of us, what we struggle with is that we're afraid of other people knowing the things that we don't have, or knowing something about us that we don't want them to believe. And so we will pretend to be something that we're not. Like sometimes we'll buy a car that's way more than we can afford because we want people to think we've got a really great car and money to be able to afford that. Or we'll buy way more clothes than we could possibly ever need, but we just don't want people to think that we're not stylish or that we don't have enough money to buy really good clothes, and so we'll spend too much money on that. Sometimes we'll actually treat the people around us a little bit differently. We'll treat them differently in public than we do in private because we want to put up a persona. Right? One of the things that I see guys have to struggle with a lot of times. How many of you have ever heard the phrase, real men don't cry? Right? Real men don't cry. So I've been to funerals, and I've watched people lose the people who are most close to them in the entire world and not shed a tear because they don't want anybody else to think that they're weak. And so they hide who they are. They hide what they're feeling so that they can pretend to be something that they're not, so people won't have some different impression of them. And one of the places where this kind of stuff really comes out is on social media, right? How many times have we ever put something on Twitter or Snapchat that pretends to be something that's not really happening? Like, it might be actually a pretty crappy day, but you put a picture out there that makes it look like you've had the most amazing experience in the world because you just want everybody to think that your life is great. Right? I've done this. There's a picture on my Facebook where it is my daughter laying on the ground with like the most beautiful smile in the entire world. And it looks like she is the absolute perfect child. I don't know how Leanne did it, but she caught the one frame in the 2 minutes of my daughter acting a fool. Like, Emma was throwing a tantrum, she was on the ground, and somehow Leanne snapped the good picture. And so what do we put on Facebook? We put that picture, not the real child who's sitting there, right? Or how many times do we do the opposite? So we're actually having a pretty good day, but we put something to make like a situation was way worse, so people will give us pity, and they'll give us sympathy, and they'll comment. Or how often do we just post, not because we really care what's going on out there, but we just want people to comment. We want to feel liked. We get disappointed when we don't get more than a certain number of likes. We put something out there to pretend that our life is one thing because we want people to think it's that way. And we're afraid of what they might believe about us if they knew the real truth. But here's where this becomes a problem, because this impacts our relationship with God. Because there is a reality that if you are constantly striving for things you don't have, then it is logically impossible to be happy with what God has given you. If you are constantly striving for what you don't have to be who you don't feel like you are, then it is literally impossible to be happy with what God has done in your life. And that is a stressful thing. To always be discontent, to always be wanting more. That is the sort of pressure that makes us feel like eventually, man, we are just going to spin out of control. And the truth is, like, this is not how God designed us to live. What we really should be striving for is what we see right here in this passage. This is written by a guy named Paul. He was one of the first pastors when the church was started, like right after Jesus left. And look at what he says about what he goes through. He says, I'm not saying this because I'm in need, for I've learned to be content, whatever the circumstances. I know what it is to be in need, and I know what it is to have plenty. I've learned the secret of being content in any and every situation, whether well-fed or hungry, whether living in plenty or in want. And I can do all of this through him, and he's talking about Jesus, who gives me strength. You see, one thing you may not know about Paul is this is a guy who was a pastor in a time when it was illegal to be a Christian. And so he's going around in a world where on a regular basis, people are chasing him out of town. They are trying to stone him. He was put in prison multiple times, and in the end, he was executed for what he believed. He is a guy who all of us would look at his life and we'd be like, that, you can keep it, right? Like, I don't want that. I don't want to trade with him. And yet, look at what he just says. He says that I've learned to be content in every single circumstance. Because the truth is, Paul has found this place in his life where he's not constantly striving for what everybody else has got. He is content with what God is doing in his life. He is content in who God created him to be. And he has found a way to be happy, whether he has tons of stuff or very little stuff. He's found the joy in that. And if we want to be able to overcome the stress of life and to be able to keep up without spinning out and be able to go through all the things we strive for without running and losing out of control, then what we have to do is this. We have to love what we have. And here is my challenge for you on how to do that. Right? Like, it's one thing for me to say, love what you have, but how do you do that? Well, here's what I think you can do. Your challenge is this. If you want to go home and you want to figure out how can I better love what I have, then my challenge to you is this. Create a list of 100 good things that God has placed in your life. Now, I know you might look at that list and you might think to yourself, 100? Like, that's insane. That's impossible. Who could create a list of 100 things? But there is actually research that shows that if you create a list of 100, something happens, right? So if you create a list of 100 things you want to do, even if you tucked that list away, you'd still end up doing about 50% of them because it does something to your mind. And so if you create a list of 100 things that are good in your life that God has blessed you with, you may go throughout your life, you may never look at that list, but something about that is going to activate something in your mind where you are just going to start remembering and being grateful for things like that. And so maybe for you, 100 seems impossible, so maybe try 25. And if you get to 25 and it felt like it was pretty easy, go to 50. And if you get to 50 and it feels like you could do it, go to 75 and then go to 100. Do what you can to get to that number. But if you want to be able to handle the stress of what's going on in life, you've got to be grateful for what you have. And this is a key way to do that. Now, for some of you, your challenge may not actually be that you're striving for what you don't have. The stress in your life may not be because of what you have. The stress for you in life may actually be because of who you feel like you are. Which is why the second solution, if you really want to overcome the stress of life and keep up without spinning out, is you got to love who you are. We live in a world that is incredibly judgmental. And in a world that loves to put us into boxes and define us by single aspects of who we are. And we get stereotyped all the time, whether it's by how we look or what's happened in our past. And sometimes that pressure can become way too overwhelming. And so I want to show you a little illustration that'll kind of highlight this. So what I got here, just that one. What I got here is an Amazon box, right? How many of you order things from Amazon ever, right? Like I probably get like 2 or 3 things a week. I'm pretty sure that we ordered Emma on Amazon. If only we could have gotten that 2-day shipping. Would that not have been so much better? All right, but if you've ever noticed, one thing I noticed with Amazon boxes is that for some reason Amazon loves boxes. So they love to put boxes inside of boxes inside of boxes, right? And so this is not really all that strange of an Amazon box. Like, you got your outside box that you get in the mail, and then you open it up, and then there's this one box that's kind of like a buffer box. Like, they just put it in there just for the fun of it. And then you got your stuff to keep everything safe, and you got your bubble wrap right there. And then maybe you have another box that actually has your item in it. But the problem is that box actually doesn't have your item in it. That box has a box inside of it that has your item in it, right? And so in the end, when you look at this box, you see all these boxes and all this stuff, and none of it is actually what you ordered. None of it is actually the heart of that package. I feel like a lot of times when we look at ourselves and we look at our lives, we see ourselves like an Amazon box. We see the outside, right? We see what we see when we look in the mirror, and how we feel like other people judge us and how they perceive us from the outside. And then sometimes, we look at this sort of insulation, and this is like the bad decisions we've made that we think define us. And then we look at maybe this box over here, and this is the relationships in our lives, our family or people who might define us. And then over here, we've got the failures in our lives, the things that we've done wrong, the mistakes that we've made, that we feel like those things define us. And then over here, we've got another box of what other people say about us. And too often we look at our lives and we look at ourselves and we think, that's who I am. Right? Like, I am what I see when I look in the mirror. I am what other people say about me. I am my bad decisions. I am my family. They define me. And the problem is, when we live in a world like this, the pressure can become so big and so intense because we can become so dissatisfied with who we are that we begin to think that all of this is who we are and we just can't handle it. We can't love who we are. And if you feel like that, then you can never move forward in life. And let me tell you, I know this from experience, right? I've seen this firsthand. One thing, looking at me now, you may not believe, is I was not popular in high school. I know, hold your shock, right? But part of the reason that I was not popular in high school could be that I look like this. That is a face that only a parent could love. And so, I mean, the truth is, when I was in high school, I was not a popular guy. I did not have tons of friends. And that was reinforced for me everywhere that I went. I wasn't like head of any sort of social club. I wasn't the most popular guy on a sports team. I wasn't even on a sports team. Like, I didn't have a girlfriend. I mean, all of that stuff in high school. And high school is one of those times when you begin to try to realize who you are. You begin to try to find your identity. And my problem was, the identity that was all around me was people told me that when I look in the mirror, I wasn't attractive enough. Or when I looked at what I did, I wasn't cool enough. I wasn't popular enough. I didn't deserve that sort of stuff. And eventually that just kind of led me to believe for pretty much most of high school that I just didn't deserve to have friends. I didn't deserve to have lots of social connections. I didn't deserve to have a girlfriend. I didn't deserve any of that because it just wasn't who I was. And I didn't love who I was. Now, lucky for me, I happened to marry a girl who likes that. But it was tough. And maybe you have a similar thing, right? I knew a girl one time who had somebody cheat on her. And in the end of it, she thought that the reason the guy cheated on her was because she didn't deserve somebody to be faithful to her. She was the kind of person who must have deserved to be cheated on. Maybe you've had other people talk about your appearance, your weight, or your looks, and you just think, I'm not beautiful enough, or I'm not skinny enough, or I'm not this, or I'm not that. Maybe other people judge you by your grades and you think to yourself, well, I'm just not smart enough. Maybe in your job, you feel like I'm just not worthy of getting that promotion. Maybe it has something to do with your family. And you're like, man, if I'm connected to them, then that must mean that there's something wrong with me because there's too much issue in my family. Maybe you've made some mistakes and you allow those to define who you are. If we live that kind of life, man, it can lead us down this terrible, dark path where we just can't love who we are, and that will hold us back in life. And the truth is that God says something so different than that. I want you to see some of the first words that God ever says in the Bible, and they're about us. It says, then God said, let us make humans, sorry about that. Let us make humans in our image, so that they may rule over the fish in the sea and the birds in the sky, over the livestock and all the wild animals, and over all the creatures that move along the ground. So God created humans in God's own image. In the image of God, He created them, male and female. He created them. When you look at yourself, you may see a bunch of boxes. You may see your past. You may see your mistakes. You may see some issues in your family. You may see what you see in the mirror. But what God wants you to know is that when God looks at you, God sees something entirely different. Just like today is Father's Day, right? It's a day that we remember and we recall those father figures in our lives who shaped us, who made us into the men and the women who we are today. And we are a reflection of what those people have done in our lives. What God wants you to know is, despite all the other boxes you might feel like are going on in your life, what truly defines you is what is at the heart of that package. And what is at the heart of that package is a mirror that reflects, like God said here, you are the image of God. You are a reflection of God. Just as you are a reflection of your family and the father figures who came before you, you are a reflection of your heavenly Father, which means that you are beautiful and you are strong and you have potential and you are filled with love and joy and hope. What it means is that you are not that mistake that you made. And you are not your divorce that you've had, and you are not your grades, and you are not what you did the other weekend. You are not what you see when you look in the mirror. You are not your illness. You are not the things that hold you back. You are a child of God, and that means something absolutely incredible. And when you can embrace this, when you can embrace who you are, when you can love who you are as a child of God, then you can handle any stress that comes your way. And so here is my challenge to you. Solution number 2 is to love who you are. And here's what that looks like. Tell someone else where you see God in them. Now that might seem a little surprising, right? Like, why wouldn't I just tell myself that I see God in me? One of the lessons I've learned being here at Ignite is that oftentimes the blessings we experience in life come fastest when we are blessing others. We experience love of God the most when we're sharing that love with other people. And just imagine if you had walked into somewhere today and somebody came up to you and they said, you know what, I just want you to know that when you smile, it just reminds me of God's smile. It reminds me of how joyful I can be in this life and how wonderful God is. So thank you for that. Or if somebody says, man, just when I look at the way you treat other people and how you care for them and how tender you are, that reminds me of just the tenderness of God and how much God loves me and how I should be treating other people. So thank you for that. I mean, there's an entirely different feeling when somebody else tells you something like that than when you just try to say it to yourself. And so share that. Because I promise you that by sharing that with other people, by telling them where you see God in them, you're going to begin to realize where you see God in yourself. See, the whole point of this, the underlying message of all of it, whether it is to love what you have or love who you are, is this realization that there is a God out there who loves you, who has given you everything you need. And if you can find contentment and hope and peace in that God, then there is nothing in this world that will be able to conquer you. There is nothing that will be too stressful or will cause you to spin out. And that God wants a relationship with you. And so what I want to invite you to do this morning as we kind of wrap things up is, if you want to flip over your connection card, I want to give you an opportunity to do something, right? To make a commitment, to make a decision, not just to hear these words, but to live these words. And so on the back of your connection card, you see a spot that says something along the lines of next steps. Maybe for you, the next step today is to just embrace the love that God has for you, to embrace the fact that God has given you everything you need and created you to be God's own reflection, something incredibly special. And you want to begin a relationship with God and figure out what that means. Or maybe you felt like you had that relationship and you let it slip, and now you want to pick it back up, and so you want to renew that relationship. Maybe for you, you want to commit that your next step is going to be to make a list of 100 things that God has blessed you with, or it's going to be to go out there and to tell someone where you see God in them, and you're just not going to let this be something that you just hear, but you're going to do something about this. But take a moment and think about where you want to respond and what God is saying in your heart right now. And the other thing I want to give you the opportunity right now to do is to respond to what God's doing in you by being able to give something back to God. You know, we can give ourselves to God. But one of the things that Jesus teaches us is that where our treasure is, our heart will follow, right? So if we fully want to experience God's blessing, then our heart has to be fully in God. And if our heart's going to be fully in God, then every aspect of our life has to be. That includes the money that God has given us, or the resources God has given us. And so we take an opportunity every single week to allow people to give back and to surrender to God this little portion that says, God, I trust you, I commit to you, I give all of myself to you. And in your program, you'll see a little envelope that looks like this. And so you can fill that out and put whatever your gift is going to be in that. But this is an opportunity. Everything, people give to us, it goes towards the work that Ignite does. None of it actually will go to my salary or anything like that. It all goes to the work we do, feeding people and helping kids and doing that sort of stuff. And so to be able to make that sort of impact and to be able to really grow in your own relationship, I want to encourage you to give as those offering plates come around in just a moment. But I'm going to give you some time to think about that and do that. And Tim's going to sing a song for us, and we're going to have a really, really cool video up here on the screen. And so let's take a moment. Well, I just want to thank you all for coming. Thank you so much for being here. I had an incredible time. I hope you did too. I want to invite you back next month. We're going to be doing it again in July. I think it's July 17th, and so make sure to put that on your calendar. We'd love to see you back here again. We're going to be looking at Pirates of the Caribbean. That's going to be the film that we're going to be looking at next month. If you didn't put your connection card in the plate, or even if you did, and you're a first-time guest with us today, just head to that table out there. It says guest table, and we've got a free gift for you just to thank you for coming. And you are dismissed.